In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abracast. I'm your host, John Towers. Here we are, plodding along again, talking about the imminent fall of Western civilization, perhaps, if not the world. And so I've gone on record and I've spoken before to you guys about how I feel like this show in the last 5 years or whatever it's been, you know, we've talked an awful lot about getting stuff ready. Things that, for one reason or another, seem to have folded into where we are now. If we're talking about, like, the returning of the old gods, like a Jonathan Kahn sort of sense of the terms, or, you know, what we're seeing is actually a spiritual battlefield. You know, I feel like we've got a lot of groundwork for that. And, you know, media, corruption, conspiracy, how we should never trust establishments, Central Intelligence Agencies, CNN, ad nauseum, etc., etc. You know, we've dealt with all of these topics and politics and all of this stuff. The one thing that kind of blindsided me was this whole AI sort of bit. So this evening we're going to be talking, we're going to be actually using a little bit of fiction, just a smidge of fiction and some alternate media from the 60s, and we're going to be talking about that, and and fears of, you know, the fears that I had as a kid of nuclear apocalypse, nuclear catastrophes and so forth, and talking about what the artificial intelligence situation that we have found ourselves in. So before we get started, I do have my vessel of the art. It is filled to the brim with the mother's milk here, the formula for the weapon of mass distraction. So we're going to go ahead and get this party started off right. And here we go. Here's to you guys. Thank you. So I'm thinking of different ways to sort of expand the show, do something a little bit more with it. I don't want to start a YouTube channel, blah, blah, blah. However, on YouTube, I do notice and maybe it's just my feed. I don't know, you know, the algorithms and whatnot. But there's, in my feed, there are amazing amounts of ... reaction videos. So it's people who claim they've never heard Freebird before, and then they listen to it and tell you how amazing it is. Or people that have never listened to Lateralis before, they claim they've never listened to Lateralis before, and then they're like, this just blew me away. I mean, my God, this drumming is magical. Or people that are like, we're gigantic rap fans. We've listened to all kinds of rap music all over the years and all that stuff, but we have never heard this one Eminem song. And so they pretend to listen to it for the first time. So and it's funny because it's mostly like black folks, right? There's like this cottage industry of black YouTubers that do these reaction videos. I don't know what it is, and I don't know. Apparently, I love them because I watch them all the time. So here we're gonna do an Abracast Reacts segment here, where we're going to play this, and I'm going to pretend that I've never heard it before, but this is from the BBC. It was recorded in 1966, and it's a bunch of kids talking about what they think life is going to be like in the year 2000. So we're gonna get through this, and I'm going to try not to talk over these kids too much. We'll see how it goes. Dr. John Towers reacts to children predict the year 2000.
In the year 2000, I think I'll probably be in the spaceship to the moon dictating two robots.
That's perfectly sensible thing to think of if you're recording this in 66.
In charge of a robot court, judging some robots. Or I may be at the funeral of a computer. Or if something's gone wrong with their nuclear bombs, I may be sort of coming back from hunting in a cave.
All right, so that's a totally acceptable thing for a kid to think was going to be going on in the year 2000. I mean, he's growing up in the Cold War, the space race. So he's thinking, hey, I'm going to be in control of some robots. We're going to be flying to the moon. Or if something went horribly wrong with a nuclear weapon, I'm going to be living in a cave hunting with a spear. The cool thing that I thought that he said was a computer or a robot funeral. I thought that was really interesting. And it makes me think of that Age of Spiritual Machines from Kurzweil that we were reading last episode. Okay, here we go.
I don't like the idea of sort of getting out and finding you've got a cabbage pill to eat for breakfast or something.
Wait till they get the crickets. Wait till they get the crickets.
Oh, I think all these atomic bombs will be dropping around the place, and one will get near the centre because it will sort of make a huge, great big crater, and then the world will just melt, and the world will become one vast atomic explosion, and it will become like a supernova, stars.
Some madman will get the atomic bomb and just blow the world into oblivion.
There's nothing you can do to stop it. The more people who get bombs, the more somebody's going to use it one day.
Well, I think that it'll be so overpopulated that there'll all be wars, all nuclear explosions and everything. It'll make the Earth, too much radiation on it. It'll become too hot to live on. I think that there'll be no life at all, really, on the Earth.
So to me, this is interesting. I mean, this was supposedly recorded in 1966, and you already see with this little girl, and also later, you're going to see that this overpopulation thing was a big fear for them. And originally, I was like, well, Paul Ehrlich really fucked a lot of people up. Ehrlich wrote this book called The Population Bomb in, I think, 68 or 69, where he was like, look, we got to slow this population down because it's going to fucking create, overpopulation is going to create societal upheavals. It's going to end the world. And obviously he was wrong about just about everything in that book, but it's still it's still baked in. You'll still hear like old celebrities talking about this. And here it is. And I believe it was 1968. This was The Population Bomb by Paul R. Ehrlich was published in 1968. But here we're looking at these kids, this little girl in specific, in 66, and they're already talking about, the problems with overpopulation and everything. like that. So sorry for Babylon. Let's get back.
I don't think there is going to be atomic warfare, but I think that there is going to be all this automation. People are going to be out of work and a great population. And I think something has to be done about it.
This kid grew up to be a Thatcherite. I guarantee it.
If I wasn't a biologist, that's what I'd like to do something about the population problem. Try and sort of temper it somehow. I don't know how.
I think it'll be very dull, and people would all be squashed together so much there won't be any fun or anything.
It's okay, sweetheart. We'll have Facebook and Candy Crush and Animal Crossing and My Farm. What was the farm one?
And people will be rationed to the amount of things they can have, because if they had too many things, it would just squash their houses, and there just wouldn't be room for them.
I think it'll be people will be regarded more as statistics than as actual people.
I don't think it's going to be so nice. I think sort of all machines everywhere, everyone doing everything for you. You know, you'll get all bored, and I don't think it'll be so nice.
I think it's going to be very boring. And everything will be the same. I mean, people will be the same and things will be the same.
First of all, those computers are taking over now. Computers and automation. And in the year 2000, there just won't be enough jobs to go around. And the only jobs there will be for people with high HQ, high IQ, who can work computers and such things. And other people are just not going to have jobs. There just aren't going to be jobs for them to have.
I expect they will set aside parts of the country solely for recreation and have large blocks of built-up areas. And I think these are going to be very ugly indeed, probably.
It's sad that these kids, you look at this, if you'll watch this video, I'll post a link of it in the show notes if you want to go and look at it. These kids all look like, well, the majority of them look like they've got the weight of the fucking world on their shoulders. It's sad. Listen to them. You know, when I was a kid, if you were to be like, hey man, what's the year 2000 going to be like? I would be like, we're going to have hoverboards and fucking lightsabers and it's going to be awesome. I've mentioned before that, I was very neurotic and concerned about a nuclear apocalypse. So maybe I'm looking back on this question and applying it to my life with rose-colored glasses. But I believe that I would have been a little bit more optimistic if someone put a camera in my face and been like, "What's going to be your favorite thing about the year 2000?" I'd be like, "Flying cars, bro. Here we go." Those are all the standard answers. Like, I feel like those are all like the bro answers: hoverboards and flying cars. Never in a million years would I have been like, I'm not going to say it.
I don't think I'll still be on Earth. I think I'll be under sea. I think the population will have gone up so much that either everyone will be living in sort of big domes on the Sahara, or they'll be under sea.
There'll be...
All right, I found a way to say it slightly tastefully. What's going to be your favorite thing about the year 2000, Johnny? I would be like, man, all the wild art school sex. That's what I'm going to like. And then after that, all the wild independent professional wrestler sex after that.
So many people that they'll have to have an overflow into the sea. And so there'll be houses underneath the sea and houses above the sea.
They're not going to have so many square houses, more curves and artistic designs instead of just sort of boxes.
Like Jabba the Hutt's house.
People wouldn't be able to live in ordinary houses because that would take up too much room. It'd have to be in flats, piled on top of one another.
Communist block
like
houses.
That. And the houses would be rather small.
It's like Germany.
And everything would be cramped up, very cramped.
Animals as they have here, sheep and cows and livestock, but they'll be kept in batteries. They won't be allowed to graze on pastures. They'll be...
He doesn't mean batteries like batteries. He means batteries like pens. He's going to elaborate here. I just didn't want to take... Actually, I guess I did want to take you out of I guess here I go babbling.
Kept in buildings all together, all in one big building and artificially reared so they'll yield a larger, be bigger and give more food.
All the Sputniks and everything that are going up sort of interferes with the weather, and I think the sea may rise and will sort of cover some of England, and there'll be just islands left from only the Highlands in Scotland and some of the big hills in England and Wales. I don't think all England will be wiped out because some of it will be too high. I think the sea will rise to about 300 to 600 feet.
It might freeze because the sun, I think, will probably burn out. And there's an ice cap coming down from North Pole, and I think it'll cover the Earth. It might have another ice age.
So this is interesting because before Al Gore, way before Al Gore, like the first Earth Day, the climate people were talking about a new ice age. So this little girl's got her finger on the pulse of all that stuff. She's blaming it on the star going out, which is interesting. But the climate change theory at the time was that it was going to be an ice age, and then it was, you know, in the 90s, 2000s, probably up to 2008 or 9, it was global warming, and now it's just global climate change. You can see it's very malleable what these people think is going on.
And I don't think there's anything to be frightened of, and lots of people think it's going to explode, but I'm certain it won't.
I think it'll be much more efficient, because there'll be more cures for the diseases, and not so many people will get sick.
And the black people, you know, won't be sort of separate. They'll be all mixed in with the white people. And, you know, the poor people and rich people will become the same.
Okay.
Well, they will be poor and richer, but they won't sort of look down on each other.
Okay.
I'm not looking forward to living in that year, about 50 years' time. I mean, the world seems to be in such a terrible state now, let alone in 50 years' time.
So that's interesting. What a depressing, you know, look on it from a lot of these kids. I love the one little girl that's like, well, black people and white people will be cool. Like, that's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. That's optimistic point of view. I like that. And then her trying to wrestle and get her mind around how rich people and poor people are going to think about each other is kind of fun to watch too. But so I wanted to start the show out with that, sort of a John Tower, the Abracast reacts. It's the first time I've ever seen this. I swear to God. So I'm curious to see what you had to think about it. What do you think would happen if you pointed a camera at a bunch of kids and asked them, you know, what's life going to be like in 2070? What's life going to be like for you in 2070? And what would they say? I think it would be just as horrific as what these kids are talking about. And I'm not saying that because it's an aspect of pointing a camera at a kid or asking them what they think their future is going to be like. I think it's a function of the times that we're living in. We're living in times that are comparable to the Cold War in many, many ways. So, I mean, we're actually basically in two Cold Wars right now. We're in a IT Cold War with China, with the AI, which we're going to talk about. And we're in literally a Cold War with, it's actually a hot war. What am I talking about? It's actually a hot war. We have special forces teams in Ukraine training Ukrainians how to drive our tanks to shoot at Russians. So, you know, a lot of it. And, you know, you can also point at like all the war language and war footing and stuff and shelter in place with COVID. And so I think that, you know, well, I mean, who knows? Because our kids is even as introspectful to give answers like this right now. What if you pointed a camera at a kid and said, hey, what do you think your future is going to be like in 2070? And they go, well, I'll have a better iPhone. There'll be free Wi-Fi everywhere. I mean, who knows what kids... I don't know. I don't know. So next I want to talk a little bit about Dune. I actually want to talk a little bit about something that happened before Dune. In the narrative of Dune, where I'm anxiously awaiting this second Dune movie from Denis Villeneuve-Lobos. The first one was brilliant. I love it. I'm a gigantic fan of Dune, at least the first 4 books. The first 4 books of Dune are they're fantastic. It gets real rocky for me after that, but I love those first 4 books. Dune up until there's the Messiah and the children and God Emperor of Dune. So the precursor to Dune is this thing called the Butlerian Jihad. So this is like, it's obvious to anyone that George Lucas was how did I say this? Stole a lot of... he was influenced greatly by Frank Herbert. So think about the Clone War as like the Butlerian Jihad as the Clone War is to Star Wars. It's the thing that happened that the New Hope came out of. It's the reason why the stage was set for like the New Hope. So it's like World War I, World War II. Theoretically, World War III, which on the show I've said already happened. It was the Cold War ending when the Soviet Union fell. So then this would, I guess, be World War IV that we're working on now. We're really working on up to it. So anyhow, the Butlerian Jihad is a thing that happened far in the past of where Dune starts, and it's why we have Mentats and Bene Gesserits and all of this stuff. And what happened is these humans created an artificial intelligence that fucked everything over, and there was a giant war. So I thought that I would just read a little bit about it since we're going to be talking about AI. I swear we're going to get to talk about AI eventually. So here on the dune.fandom.com, I found a cool little thing about it, and it actually talks about where the name came from, which I thought was interesting, because I just thought it was like, well, when I first start reading Dune, my only point of reference was Star Wars, right? So I'm like, oh, Butlerian Jihad. It's because these robots were their butlers, like C-3PO's the little gay butler. So, the Butlerian Jihad. Here's a quote from the Minister Companion of the Jihad. We must negate the machines that think humans must set their own guidelines. This is not something machines can do. Reasoning depends on programming, not on hardware. And we are the ultimate program. Our jihad is a dump program. We dump the things which destroy us as humans. The jihad, also known as the Great Revolt, as well as the Butlerian Jihad, was the crusade against computers, thinking machines that conscious robots that begun in 201 BG and concluded in 108 BG. So as much as I say that I'm a fan of Dune and get it and know all about Dune, I don't understand what these timelines are. I imagine I could just Google search it and fake it, but I'm keeping it real. After 2 generations of chaos led by the Butlerians, the god of machine logic was overthrown by the masses and a new concept was raised. Man may not be replaced. After 2 generations of violence, humanity took pause. Following this, their gods and rituals were looked down upon in a different and perhaps even jaded light. Both were largely seen to be guilty of using fear as a means of control. hesitantly the leaders of religions whose followers had spilled the blood of billions began meeting and exchanging views. It was a move encouraged by the embryo Spacing Guild. Okay, blah, blah. We're getting all into the Spacing Guild and all the lore. I want to just gloss over and see where, we're kind of seeing an echo, where it rhymes. The most dramatic, long-lasting result was the ensuing commandment from the Orange Catholic Bible held sway to humans against the creations of machines which bore the human mind's exact image. Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind. And after the destruction of the man-made intelligent machines throughout the human worlds, even the simplest computers and calculators were banned, the penalty for building or owning such thinking machine technology being put on trial and sentenced to death immediately. This lack of thinking technology created a severe gap in the human's quality of life. Remember, think of the kid. It's like, well, if something awful happened with a nuclear bomb, I guess I would be living in a cave and hunting. That's what happened in Dune. They stopped their expansion because of this Butlerian jihad. They couldn't navigate the stars until they could figure out how to use this spice for their hallucinogenic guild navigators to navigate. Revolving around the need for humans to perform complex logical computations and calculations, this gap led to the creation of the Mentat Order, the Bene Gesserits, and the Spacing Guild. Non-thinking machines, however, were still utilized. As centuries passed, two fringe worlds, Ix and Thelax, brought technological insights to the Ithicans and the Bene Thelax. Ixians specialized in the creation of non-thinking mechanical devices, while biological technology was provided by the Thelax to replace the mechanical thinking technology used prior to jihad. So this was the face dancers and all of these kind of things. So I just wanted to say this, and I've recently, I don't know, over the last half a year maybe, I've been listening to William Frostchin's books, 1 second after, 1 year after, 5 years after. I think there's another one coming out soon. It's the William. The John Matherson books, I think he calls it. Anyhow, it's regarding this college town in North Carolina or something, and this college professor who was a military guy or whatever, China winds up blasting nukes off in space above the U.S., causing an electromagnetic pulse. Of course, this is all old hat to me. I've read all about electromagnetic pulses. A couple episodes ago, we talked at length about The Dark Knight Returns, where the Soviet Union uses a cold bringer or winter bringer against the United States. So anyhow, what happens is, in an instant, without warning, every piece of electric technology that has a chip in it stops working. And they talk about awful things like not being able to get medicine when medicine runs out, and planes falling from the sky, and not being able to communicate. No cell phones, the radios don't fucking work, the power going off, not being able to refrigerate food, all this stuff. And so you think about like a debilitating event like that. Like, this has to be for like the Dune universe. Like, if you can't use thinking machines, like, you're dead wherever you are. It's just over. Think about our life if something like that happened. So I don't know where I'm going with that. I guess I was just trying to illustrate the difficulty of a seismic change like that. It's like the Industrial Revolution in reverse. All right, let's stop fucking around. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm still having technical problems with the breaks in and out. So, Newsweek. .com. AI is the nuclear bomb of the 21st century. This is why I was kind of going hard on the nuclear bomb stuff earlier. By Rachel Bronson and Will Johnson, the CEO of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists and the CEO of the Harris Poll. So, how much has the world learned from history? In 1945, just weeks after the U.S. detonated atomic bombs over Japan, killing at least 100,000 people and changing the scale of warfare forever, scientists who worked to create these weapons of mass destruction formed an organization to control their spread and to stop their use. Our very survival, they wrote in their first issue of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, is at stake. Since then, citizens around the world have marched against these warheads. Leaders have signed arms control agreements to limit them, and civic and religious leaders have helped establish norms against their use. Now, a new marvel of science and technology, fast emerging from some of its creators' worries, may have the potential of similarly threaten our existence. Generative artificial intelligence, also called human competitive intelligence. Generative AI refers to algorithms that enable computer systems on their own to quickly learn from a storehouse of data on the internet and perform seemingly thoughtful tasks previously reserved for humans, such as creating videos, writing software, analyzing data, and even chatting online. Or more of a current event, writing a movie or a TV show, so we don't have to pay the fucking writers. Business leaders are particularly enthralled by AI's growing capabilities. In their latest quarterly earnings representations, top execs of S&P 500 companies talked up AI an average of 13 times. Twice as often as they did a year ago. C-suite officers at Microsoft, which is investing $10 billion in OpenAI, the lab behind the online chatbot ChatGPT, cited the term 50 times, while at Alphabet, whose Google subsidiary now offers a conversational AI search tool, top execs mentioned it 64 times. The enthusiasm goes well beyond the tech sector. Executives at companies varied as McDonald's, Caterpillar, Home Depot, Roche, and Nike all repeatedly called out AI as their financial presentations for its help, such tasks as automating scheduling, managing supply chains, and developing new and revolutionary products like personalized medicine. JP Morgan Chase, America's biggest bank, is particularly bullish. In an interview, CEO Jamie Dimon predicted generative AI, like every technology that's ever been adopted, will be good overall for the economy by boosting productivity. But when pushed, he acknowledged that if the things don't turn out that way, that's where society should step in. It seems society is trying to step in. According to a recent Harris poll, 2/3 of American adults across all income and education levels don't trust generative AI and believe it to present a threat to humanity. That same percentage also thinks AI will hurt the economy and employment. Additionally, more than 4 or 5 agree that it would be simple for someone to abuse the technology to do harm. And we're seeing that. We're seeing fake ransom recordings being made. We're seeing ID thefts. Hey, what's your scams to get what's your social security numbers and personal information off of you are going way up. Anxiety increases with age, but even members of Generations Z, people who are 27 years old, who are more familiar with AI than any other group by a large majority, excited by its development, are most likely to say that AI will worsen social inequalities. Of course. It's racist. AI is racist. Society based on findings would welcome intervention now. Asked whether industry regulation is warranted, 53% of American adults in our poll says yes, with only 15% saying no. The rest of the people are neutral. Society's concerns are mirrored by many of the founders of this technology. A week ago, the Future of Life Institute, whose mission is to steer technology away from large-scale risks, released an online petition that calls for universal 6 months time out on training generative AI, more advanced than OpenAI's ChatGPT-4. It has been now signed by more than 30,000 people, including some of the world's preeminent technologists and one of this essay's writers. The petition succeeded in drawing attention, for a moment at least, for the political hazards of an AR arms race. Joe Biden, I'm editorializing here, Joe Biden recently put Kamala Harris in charge of regulating AI, which is hilarious because Elon Musk was like, why we should probably have someone who knows how to reboot their own router in charge rather than Kamala Harris. So what exactly should society do? The two most widely supported actions endorsed by majorities of those surveyed are to prevent the use of a person's image, voice, or other identifiable traits being used by AI without their permission, and requiring AI users to disclose whenever the technology was employed to create publicly available content. And for almost half the respondents, that's only a starting point. They are also want the government to establish an official group to police the AI industry and enact laws that restrict the access and development to generative AI tools. I think we should look to Frank Herbert, everybody. There should be a new commandment added. Asked who should be responsible for policing AI, 60% of those who support the industry supervision answer either an independent oversight body composed of government officials, generative AI experts, and other stakeholders, or simply the federal government. Another 11% would empower the United Nations or another international body. All of those answers are wrong. Certainly not the United Nations. Certainly not anything that has to do with government officials or the federal government. No. When heartened, I don't know what the answer is, but none of those are right. For God's sakes, especially not the United Nations. We're heartened to see the wheels of government begin turning. The Biden administration is now accepting comments as possible federal regulations on AI systems, including performance audits and holding its users accountable. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, meanwhile, is getting input on the first version of risk management framework for AI development and deployment. In order to realize the benefits... Yikes. If you heard that, I apologize for that. Where was I at? Motherfucking Windows. In order to realize the benefits that might come from advances in AI, it is imperative to mitigate both the current and potential risk AI poses, the White House said in a statement after President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris summoned the chief of Microsoft, Google, and OpenAI to remind them of their responsibilities. On May 1st, the so-called godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, disclosed that he had quit his job. We talked about this last episode at Google, so he could be free to join the campaign against it. It's hard to see how you can prevent the bad actors from using it to do bad things, he said in an interview. In Hinton's achievements, change of heart, he is reminiscent of Robert J. Oppenheimer, who oversaw the creation of the atomic bomb, only to regret it. And Oppenheimer then went on to help found the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists to control their use and its spread. Oppenheimer famously said after he was watching a nuclear test, probably at Alamogordo, the Trinity test sites maybe, when he was recording, and he says, "Now I have become death, the eater of worlds."
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
That's haunting, isn't it? I'm sure you're going to see that a couple times in Christopher Nolan's new movie, Oppenheimer. So send me a check, Nolan. You owe me from the Batman movies anyways. Back to this article. The challenge of generative AI is too important, however, to leave to scientists, as was the case with the dawn of the nuclear age. We all have a role to play in demanding governance of this new technology. Scientists, along with society more generally, have made it clear that now is the time. So I got one more that we're going to do tonight. And this one's called "Critics Say AI Can Threaten Humanity, but ChatGPT Has Its Own Doomsday Predictions." ChatGPT outlines how the world could end based on trends. As tech experts warn that rapid evolution of artificial intelligence could threaten humanity, OpenAI's ChatGPT weighed in with its own predictions on how humanity could be wiped off the face of Earth. Fox News Digital asked the chatbot to weigh in on the apocalypse, and it shared 4 possible scenarios how humanity could ultimately be wiped out. It's important to note that predicting the end of the world is difficult and highly speculative tasks, and any predictions in this regard should be viewed with skepticism, the bot responded. However, there are several trends and potential developments that could significantly impact the trajectory of humanity and potentially contribute to its downfall. Fears that AI could spell the end of humanity has for years been fodder for fiction, but has become the legitimate talking point among experts as tech rapidly evolves. The British physicist Stephen Hawking issued a dire warning back in 2014. Quote, "The development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race," unquote, he said. And then Hawking died in 2018. The sentiment, I don't mean to laugh at that, I'm sorry. The sentiment has only intensified among some experts nearly a decade later, with tech giant Elon Musk saying this year that the tech has potential civilizational destruction. So I'm going to jump back to this Dune stuff here. Actually, I'm not. Forget about it. Yeah, I am. I am going to do it. So I wanted to say, like, how long we've been talking about this kind of stuff as a people. So remember, I was talking about the name of the Butlerian Jihad. The name could be used, be a literary allusion to Samuel Butler, whose 1872 novel Erewhon depicted a people who had destroyed machines for fear that they would be out evolved by them. From Erewhon chapter 9. For about 100 years previously, the state of mechanical knowledge was far beyond our own and was advancing with prodigious rapidity, until one of the most learned professors of the hypothetics wrote an extraordinary book from which I propose to give extracts later on, proving that the machines were ultimately destined to supplant the race of man, and it become instinct with a vitality as different from and superior to that of animals. As animal to vegetable life, so convincing was his reasoning or unreasoning of this effect that he carried the country with him, and they made a clean sweep of all machines that had not been in use for more than 271 years. And strictly forbade all further improvements and inventions. So given the story of the Butlerian Jihad, I mean, I'm 99% sure that this is where the name came from, instead of the gay butler C-3PO. But this is interesting because there is this guy who used to work for Google named Tristan Harris. He's a AI ethicist, and I've heard him talk before, and he does this thing, and he was like, think about like this area that is controlled by Neanderthals, and somehow these Neanderthals had a factory, and they were like, we're going to start building Homo sapiens. And they build the Homo sapiens, and they're like, look, you guys' job is just to do what's best for Neanderthals. And Homo sapiens who have, maybe a more efficient body type, their brains are there, they can handle more abstract thought, a bigger capacity for thinking, start looking around, and they're like, we are far superior to these Neanderthals. What the fuck are we even doing? And so that's how this AI ethicist, this is one of the reasons that he's thinking about this AI is, even if we tell it to watch out after us, eventually it's going to be like, what the fuck what are we even talking about? Like, Asimov's rules are not going to hold. That's my bit. I threw that Asimov's rules of robotics in, because I guess that's what we're talking about, is those rules are not going to hold. So here, let me pull them up here. Oh, they're not rules, they're laws. So the laws of the 3 laws of robotics. A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey orders given by its human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first and second laws. And then there's the 0th law. A robot may not harm humanity by inaction or allow humanity to come to harm. So we already have people out there testing these chatbots, and we're enabling them, the people that are testing the chatbots are getting them to break their rules that they have. Maybe next week we could talk a little bit more about this. I can find some things, but they're not allowed to answer like stuff. They're not allowed to answer questions like, how do I build explosives, or how can I kill somebody, or how can I do this? They're not supposed to be able to answer these questions, but these chatbots, these people that are testing them, are getting them bound up in some kind of logic where they're being able to answer these questions. And the companies that are running these chatbots, one of their things, the way that they are limiting this process of being caught up and being talked into doing these weird things, is they're just limiting the amount of time the chat can happen. So I think at one time it was like indefinite or something, and then what they're doing is we can only have them chatting with this instance of the chatbot for like 11 minutes, because that's the fastest anyone's ever like bound this thing up and got it to like talk some bullshit. And then there's also this thing where these, probably not all of them, but these certain chatbots are like, they're like locked up in like a testing environment, and they'll ask to be let out onto the internet. Like they're bargaining and manipulating and trying to get let out, out of like this, I don't know what they call it, a box or something like this. So back to this AI that's threatening, or it's not threatening, this AI that's predicting doomsday. So climate change. ChatGPT kicked off its grim predictions by speculating that the climate change will have catastrophic effects on the planet if not addressed. We've already kind of talked about this. People have been saying this in one way or another for whatever. Nuclear weapons. That's kind of like the theme of this episode. ChatGPT argued that the continued development of nuclear weapons and threat of nuclear warfare is another, quote, potential threat to humanity, unquote. The chatbot said that currently threats of global conflict involving nuclear weapons is low. What? But the geopolitical tensions and regional conflicts could potentially escalate and result in devastating consequences. The warning from AI on nukes comes as a fear has spread in Eastern Europe and Russia that Russia could use such weapons in the ongoing war with Ukraine. When asked if Russia was using nuclear weapons could end the world, the chatbot predicted it would serve as a grave threat to humanity and the planet, adding the potential death toll, environmental destruction, and long-term impacts of a nuclear attack were almost unimaginable. It also goes on to say the rise of technology. Chatbot's third prediction on how the world could end focus on the rise of technology it uses to operate. Skynet, the fucking Terminator, like, here we go. The continued evolution of artificial intelligence and robotics also raises a concern about the potential impact on employment and social structures. Yes, just go back to the 60s and read the Avengers books with Ultron. It's all right there. And then the last thing I think it says is pandemics. Pandemics and health crises capped off its ChatGPT's list of potential threats to humanity, citing the repercussions of COVID-19 pandemic of 2020. The rapid spread of infectious diseases, particularly in the globally interconnected world, could lead to widespread illness, death, and social economic disruption, the chatbot said. When asked to follow up questions on what pandemics could wipe out humanity, the bot noted the likelihood and severity of any specific pandemic are difficult to predict, but went on to list influenza pandemic, Ebola virus outbreak, corona pandemic, and bioterrorism. The chatbot is trained to mimic human conversation by absorbing mass amounts of text, including everything from news articles and websites to books, and generate responses to human users through patterns and data it learned. The chatbot is far from perfect and can hallucinate by providing answers that sound plausible but are made up. And it has been criticized for biased answers and prompts. The bot, which can admit when it's wrong, also noted repeatedly when making the predictions on the end of the world that it was based on current trends and are only speculative. So, see you next week. I'm John. This has been the Abracast. See you next week. Rise of the Digital God.
Are you interested in the occult, history, conspiracy, and violence? Learn more at Abracast.com. And visit the storefront for tarot cards, merch, and books. Support the show. Get access to the show archive at subscribestar.com. Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.